In this unit, rather than taking each slide down for your notes, you will answer the two key questions found in this video. One will address Italian politics, and the other one will address the secret societies that rose up. There were a number of political groups in Italy in 1815, each having different hopes and aims. There was absolute monarchy, a political system under which the monarch rules without a constitution or parliament to limit their power. Another idea that was rising up was republican democracy, a system under which an elected government controls the affairs of a state and in which there is no monarch, even as a figurehead. And lastly, there was constitutional monarchy, a system under which a king is bound by certain agreed restrictions on his power set out in a written document or a constitution. Also, this time is marked by the rise of secret societies like the Freemasons and the Carbonari. The key question for this section will be what political groups existed in Italy after the defeat of Napoleon, and what did each believe? Liberals believed that people had the right to some say in government and that this was best done through representative assembly or parliament elected by property owners. Liberals were also concerned with establishing a rule of law which guaranteed certain rights such as a fair trial and certain freedoms such as free speech for all citizens. They were generally non-violent, mainly middle class, and were against both an absolute monarchy and a republican democracy. They favored instead a constitutional monarchy. Radicals were much more extreme in their views. They wanted social reforms and a fairer distribution of wealth, and were often prepared to use violence as a way to obtain their goals. Many of them were members of revolutionary secret societies and believed that political power should lie with the people, not with Parliament, unless it were elected by all men and not just by property owners. There was at this time little thought of giving a vote to peasants or to women, since both of these groups were believed to be incapable of taking an intelligent interest in politics. Radicals had many disagreements with the liberals, but at least both groups were opposed to the restored monarchies, and apparently women. Nationalists believed that the people of the same race, language, culture, and tradition should be united in an independent nation of their own. It should have clear geographical boundaries and not be subject to control by any other nation. Many nationalists went further and wanted a republic instead of a monarchy. Liberals and radicals both supported nationalism and unification as the way forward for Italy, even though they did not agree on whether the means to achieve this aim should be peaceful or violent. There was also widespread disagreement about whether the whole of the Italian peninsula or merely part of it should be unified. Metternich adopted an entirely negative stance, being totally opposed to nationalism, liberalism, and radicalism. He had no intention of allowing such dangerous ideas to spread, as they would undermine not just Austrian control of Italy, but perhaps the whole state of Austria, which was not a nation state, but the family property of the Habsburg family, containing many different cultural and ethnic groups. Hence, he saw the need to maintain the Italian jigsaw of separate states ruled by absolute monarchs. He said Italy, as a united nation, should continue not to exist. In 1815, there were no Italians, he insisted, only Neapolitans, Piedmontese, Tuscans, and the rest, and that was how it should stay. Hence, Italy would be weak, divided, and easily controlled by Austria. Metternich was not alone in these beliefs. Many intelligent, well-educated men saw nothing but difficulties in the way of unity between the Italian states. believing that local loyalties were still more important to the people of the peninsula than dreams of national unity. Hence, the Piedmontese ambassador to Russia wrote about the possible takeover of Genoa by Piedmont in 1818, that perhaps the Piedmontese and the Genoans could not mix, separated as they are by ancient and ingrained hatred. So Italian politics in 1815 were complicated. There was liberals that were both moderate and still wanted a constitutional monarchy, and then there were radicals who were extreme and democratically republic. But also the absolute monarchies and the nobles still saw both of them as radical. These led to national movements and then opposition by Austria. The key question for this section is, what did secret societies hope to achieve, and why did they have only limited success? In 1820, when revolutions broke out first in Sicily and then in Naples and Piedmont, secret societies played an important part. These societies are thought to have developed from 18th century Freemasonry, where men formed themselves into groups pledged to mutual protection with secret passwords and semi-religious rituals. The Church viewed these groups with grave suspicion as anti-Catholic and as a danger to the established social order. In the 1790s, similar groups whose main purpose was to drive out the French had sprung up all over Italy. After 1815, their aims changed to overthrowing the restored monarchs and to driving out the Austrians. The societies attracted a wide variety of members: army officers, students, lawyers, teachers, and doctors, all well educated and mostly middle class. A few noblemen also joined, but peasants and workers were almost unknown. The majority of members were patriotic, enthusiastic, and daring. Many were idealists, some were dreamers, a few were rogues and criminals. Some wanted to be leaders and were happy to risk their lives in wild adventures and impossible missions. The great weakness of the societies was their unwillingness to act together and their lack of an overall organization. Most societies were small and scattered. Sometimes they did work together, but much more often they operated on their own, and because of their emphasis on secrecy, historians are still not sure how many members they had or how successful they were. Far and away the best known and most important of the societies was the Carbonari. Carbonari means charcoal burners in Italian, and it has been suggested that the earliest members were men who sold charcoal for domestic fuel. Soon, however, middle-class members predominated. They were particularly active in southern Italy, especially in Naples, where they are thought to have had about 60,000 members. This was about 5% of the adult male population, and the government of Naples became worried enough to order the suppression of the society. Their efforts failed, and membership of the Carbonari went on to rise. It is known that they had elaborate rituals and swore unquestioning obedience to their leaders. Unlike many other secret societies, this one was not particularly anti-Catholic, and although some of its members planned armed revolution and the overthrow of existing social order, they were not committed Republicans. Often their aims, in fact, were surprisingly mild ones. In Piedmont, they hoped to establish a constitutional monarchy, with a king having only limited power. Similarly, in Naples, they did not want to replace the king with a republic, but just to persuade him to grant a constitution. About secret societies, oftentimes they were weak and divided, and their aims were usually very moderate. They did tend to be anti-Austrian, and they did tend to come from the middle class. They are thought to have originated from earlier secret societies like Freemasonry and the Carbonari, which goes on to have a renewed interest in the unification of Italy.